The 2014 Kansas City Chiefs were one of the weirdest teams I remember watching since I started following football in 2005. This team started 0-2, were 2-3 going into their bye week, then won 5 straight, only then to lose 4 of their last 6 to finish 9-7, just short of the playoffs. Oh, and they went all 16 games that season without throwing a touchdown to a wide receiver. Dwayne Bowe was the number 1 wide receiver for that Chiefs squad. He actually had 3 separate 1,000-yard seasons prior to 2014 and caught 15 touchdowns by himself in 2010, leading to his first and only Pro Bowl selection. However, the 30-year-old Bowe would rack up just over 750 yards with 0 touchdowns on 60 catches across his 15 games that season. The leading receiver for that Kansas City team would be a 25-year-old tight end who was a 3rd-round pick just a year prior in 2013, Travis Kelce. Kelce spent almost his entire rookie season on IR due to a microfracture procedure on his knee. He had been dealing with a bone bruise since the 2013 preseason and appeared briefly in just 1 regular season game. While the receivers would spend 16 games touchdownless, Kelce would catch his first in the Chiefs' 3rd game against the Miami Dolphins. Kelce would go on to have an impressive first full season. On top of being the team's leading receiver during the 2014 season, totaling 862 yards off 67 receptions, he also had 5 touchdowns to tie for the team lead. His 2014 wouldn't be without controversy, as on November 30th, he was fined $11,025 for unsportsmanlike conduct during a 29-16 loss to the Denver Broncos. Kelce made an inappropriate hand gesture and simulated a jerking motion at the Broncos linebacker Von Miller. Chiefs head coach Andy Reid later called this immature. Kelce, just to prove everyone wrong, went out the next game against the Arizona Cardinals and had 7 receptions for 110 yards for his first NFL game with over 100 receiving yards. However, my favorite Kelce, and actually Dwayne Bowe moment from that season happened in the regular season finale against the San Diego Chargers, but we'll get back to that. We'll get back to that because this video isn't about Bowe and Kelce, but about this whole wacky team. When you think of what makes a great passing offense, what do you think of? A great QB with a strong arm? Sure. An impressive wide receiver or 2 that can get open consistently? Of course. Maybe a tight end that has a matchup nightmare versus virtually any defender? Yeah, that would be awesome. How about an O-line that will give the quarterback enough time to make a read? Well, duh. While that would all be great, you're rarely going to get all of that, and most teams are lucky to have one of those components. So what should you really expect from your team's passing offense as an NFL fan? If we went back to 1969, nice by the way, also the first time the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, you could expect your team to throw for about 2,500 yards and 20 touchdowns, while completing 53% of their passes. Oh, and throwing roughly 19 interceptions across their 14-game season. If we fast forward to 1984, we see those averages tick up nearly across the board. Of course, there were 2 more games, but in the 16 games, teams threw for just under 3,300 yards and 22 touchdowns while completing 56% of their passes. You might be wondering about the interceptions. Yeah, that number went up too, namely by 2 to 21 interceptions on average. And remember, this is when Dan Marino would set the touchdown record by throwing for 5,084 yards and 48 touchdowns. Still one of the best seasons we have ever seen by an NFL quarterback. By the time we get to 2004, when we see Peyton Manning break Marino's record for touchdown passes, those numbers haven't changed too much. But passing is getting much more efficient. On average, teams are throwing for just over 3,350 yards and 23 touchdowns to just 16 interceptions while completing almost 60% of their passes. That brings us to 2014 and the Kansas City Chiefs. As we get close to the modern age, we see efficiency continue to rise across the NFL. By this year, teams were throwing for about 3,800 yards and 25 touchdowns to just 14 interceptions while completing 63% of their passes. We see this trend continue to this day, with all indicators in 2021 continuing to go up and blowing previous year statistics out of the water. Of course, some of this efficiency might be irrelevant when your wide receivers are unable to catch any touchdown passes. If we pretended that this was a normal team and only looked at how starting quarterback Alex Smith played based on his box score stats, we might conclude that maybe he was playing a traditional game manager role, maybe being too conservative with the ball, but it wasn't anything that strange. However, what is truly strange is that this team, while being a bottom 5 passing offense, still would be the first team since 1964 to accomplish the feat of not throwing a touchdown to a player designated as a wide receiver. All this made me curious about what actually happened here, and especially what happened during each of Alex Smith's touchdowns that led to this accomplishment. Let's go back in time to 2014 to review a bunch of Kansas City games from a 9-7 squad that failed to make the playoffs. Before we start, let's cleanse our palates a little bit with a touchdown pass to a wide receiver from Alex Smith.
Another first down. Here they go, and he gets in for the touchdown.
See, it is possible. Now, some of you might think maybe the Chiefs didn't really give many opportunities for their wide receivers to catch touchdown passes. But here's the thing, you were half right and half wrong. Let me explain. Since I do not currently have access to every NFL game from the 2014 season, I went to Pro Football Reference and charted all scoring opportunities for the 2014 Chiefs. For the sake of this exercise, I defined a scoring opportunity as any play that led to a score, any play that a team got into the red zone, or any play within the red zone. Of course, not all of these plays would guarantee a touchdown should they be completed, but it gives us a good idea of what Kansas City's philosophy was once they were in scoring range. Of the data I crunched for the 2014 season, the Kansas City Chiefs threw to a wide receiver in scoring opportunities in only about 25% of chances. They threw to a running back or tight end 38% of the time, and rushed about 37% of their scoring opportunities. Originally, I wasn't sure how to process this information. Is it average? Is it low? I mean, it did feel low. So to give it some additional context, I decided to look at the team with the 16th most passing yards from that season, the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys also happened to have the wide receiver with the most receiving touchdowns that season, Dez Bryant. After charting Dallas' scoring opportunities, here is how they compare with the Chiefs. The Cowboys rarely threw to the running backs or tight ends, and threw to wide receivers about 10% more than Kansas City. This made me question, what happened in those 60 scoring opportunities the Chiefs theoretically had to have a wide receiver score that season? In Dallas's case, they were able to have 32% of those passes to wide receivers and scoring opportunities result in a touchdown. Kansas City, as you imagined, was at 0, a big fat goose egg. Of those 60 chances, I've identified 5 opportunities I want to highlight, as I view them as prime wide receiver touchdown plays that more likely than not should have been converted by Dwayne Bowe. And I mentioned Dwayne Bowe because he was on the receiving end of all of these plays. Let's travel to September 14th, 2014. This is the Week 2 game between the Broncos and Chiefs. Denver scored a field goal in their last possession to extend their lead to 7, now up 24-17. Kansas City has drove all the way down to the Broncos 2, but is 4th down with only 18 seconds left of the game. Alex Smith catches the snap out of shotgun and sees Dwayne Bowe on a slant over the middle of the field. However, Broncos defender Terrence Knighton is hovering in the center of the end zone. Smith tries to fit it around Knighton to get the ball to Bowe, but unfortunately, Knighton knocks it down, effectively ending the game and any chance of a wide receiver touchdown in this one. Our next 2 highlights bring us to Arrowhead for a game versus New England on September 29th, just 2 weeks after our previous heartbreak. In a game that largely turned into a blowout, but with the Chiefs winning 41-14 rather than the Patriots. Our first Dwayne Bowe play happens on Kansas City's second drive of the first quarter. On a 3rd and 8, Alex Smith rears up and throws a strike to Dwayne Bowe that goes right by Darrelle Revis' outstretched hands. Ultimately, he gets by Revis, but he gets tackled at the 2. While this might not look like a prime scoring opportunity, I bring this one up because it is still one of the closest chances a Chiefs wide receiver would have that season. It was truly slim pickings that entire year. Still, that isn't all for this game, as let's go to the second quarter with 8 seconds left in the half. It is a 3rd and 5, and Alex Smith is under center. He looks left, but we all know he is trying to hold the defense while he's waiting on Bowe. He quickly darts his eyes back to the right towards Bowe, once he sees the defense move and he chucks it up. The ball is on target, and Bowe appears to catch it with his feet on the end zone line. It is hard to tell whether the ball was ever over the line, especially considering the sideline ref does not immediately call it a touchdown. However, we will never get an official ruling as there was a penalty, a legal use of the hands on the other side of the field. Time was added back to the clock, and Cairo Santos ended up kicking 3 for the Chiefs. The question is now, would that have been a touchdown? In my book, unfortunately not. It looks like a close call, but it appears that it was just short and he was pushed back from the ball ever reaching the line. It is really close, but I can't see how that would have been called a touchdown for Bowe. So our quest continues. Next up, we find ourselves in Pittsburgh for a matchup versus the Steelers on December 21st. By now, everyone has begun to pick up on the fact that the Chiefs wide receivers are without any touchdowns this season, and this joke is only heightened after what happens in the second quarter. It's Kansas City's second possession of the game, and we are on the Steelers' 9 for a 2nd and 4 play. Dwayne Bowe goes out for an end zone fade, and Alex Smith has thrown a gorgeous back shoulder throw. Please ignore the relative quality of this clip, as this pass is really something you appreciate more in 4K. The ball is clearly in the end zone and is in Dwayne Bowe's hands, but it is not to be. He drops it. This should have ended it, but not for this Chiefs team. These wide receivers are truly incapable of catching anything that is in the end zone. Still, this is not the last chance that Bowe would have, as we now need to talk about a Week 17 game in Arrowhead. The Chiefs are facing off versus the 9-6 Chargers. San Diego is hoping to win this game while seeing the Dolphins and Ravens lose. If this happens, the Chargers will clinch a playoff berth, which would be the second straight trip for second-year head coach Mike McCoy. Unfortunately, Kansas City did not want to see their division rivals in the playoffs, and would knock them off 19-7. While all the context around this game is interesting, we are not here to talk about that, but rather about how Dwayne Bowe will somehow get another chance and blow it yet again. Remember how I talked earlier about my favorite Travis Kelce moment from the season? Well, here it is. Chase Daniel is the quarterback for the Chiefs right now, and it is the second quarter of the game. After starting on their own 2, Kansas City has gone all the way down to the Chargers' 11-yard line. Daniel catches the snap and stares down Dwayne Bowe on what appears to be a curl route. Bowe catches down the 4-yard line and appears that no one is immediately behind him. Maybe he can just fall back into the end zone. Bowe gets wrapped up at right about the 2-yard line, but it appears that his momentum is about to carry him into the end zone. He is falling with the ball out, and this time it should be over the line. But no, as he falls over the line, Jaleel Adai hits him in midair, and the ball pops out and bounces into the end zone. It won't happen. It can't happen. Not only did he not score, but there is going to be a turnover. However, in an effort to avoid 2 heartbreaks in one play, Travis Kelce is there to catch the bounce. Kelce almost appears to realize the context of what just happened, and how close they were to ending the wide receiver touchdown drought. He barely celebrates and appears to look back at Bowe the entire time. Chase Daniel, on the other hand, is ecstatic. I think he's just happy to be out there, honestly. While this was an odd occurrence in NFL history, it is not one that would hurt the Chiefs in the long run. Remember, this was a team that 2 seasons prior, in 2012, had a 2-14 season under Romeo Crennel. The starting quarterbacks for that team were Matt Cassel and Brady Quinn, who threw a combined 8 touchdowns and 20 interceptions. 4 of those touchdowns would go to wide receivers, in case you were wondering. By 2013, under Andy Reid and Alex Smith, they would go on to have an 11-5 record, losing a classic playoff game to the Colts, 45-44, where 2 wide receivers would catch touchdown passes from Alex Smith. Still, even though the 2014 season was disappointing, the Chiefs would regroup in 2015 with an 11-5 season and a 1,000-yard, 8-touchdown year from newly acquired wide receiver Jeremy Maclin. The next year, they added some guy named Tyreek Hill, and a year after that, they picked up an inaccurate gunslinger from Texas Tech named Patrick Mahomes. All in all, while we can step back and laugh at the pure lunacy of a modern NFL team going 659 days without a wide receiver catching a touchdown, Kansas City might be the ones who truly got the last laugh. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you taking the time to watch the entire video and hope you liked it. If you know of any other oddities in NFL history you'd like me to cover, let me know and I'll add it to my list. Thanks again, and if you want some more content, check out any of the videos on the screen right now.